Hi guys, and welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Mr. Tom McAdam. Tom, welcome.
Morning. Thank you very much. It's great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So Tom, I think I was actually introduced to you by Kat Hart. So contact the corporate world to go into fitness because that was around the time that I was thinking about doing it. And she's like, Tom's a great guy. He's done something very similar to you. It would be worth you linking up. So maybe let's start there.
Yeah.
What were you doing before you got into fitness, and how did that transition look for you?
Yeah. So before I was in fitness, I was actually in finance. So in investment banking in the city, I worked at Morgan Stanley for a little while. That was after graduating. And I don't know if this is similar to your experience, but this was kind of the path that I was, I guess, supposed to go down, some kind of traditional professional route, whether it was investment banking or being a lawyer or something like that, or a consultant, whatever it might be. That was kind of the natural thing that was expected. But I found fairly quickly that it wasn't a lifestyle that I really could see myself leading for a long time. At that stage, obviously, I was already very interested in fitness and health. And the lifestyle itself obviously doesn't fit very well with that. The lifestyle of being an investment banker. I was on the trading floor, so it was like super busy, super kind of high stress. But also you look up to the more senior people in your team or in the company. And what you want to see when you look up to your seniors is, role models or people that you would potentially want to be in the future. And there wasn't a huge amount of that. There was a lot of, these people were all very nice, but health problems were really common. There was a guy who was in his late 30s who had recently had an aortic dissection in the shower. There was a guy who had brain cancer. There was a guy who had dropped dead, had a heart attack while playing a kind of casual game of five-a-side football, like a firm football game. So there's all sorts of things going on, alcoholism, obviously lots of people overweight, unhealthy. So it just didn't seem like it was something that I could be in long term, besides the fact that you're sitting down for 12 hours a day. And I remember I used to go to the gym after work, and I would have to mobilize for like half an hour before I could even do a decent squat. Not even a decent squat, just a passable squat. So it was about a year there before I really realized that it wasn't going to work. Initially, I actually left thinking I might get a similar job. I wanted to be a trader, and I thought that might be a better fit. But once I left Morgan Stanley, I quickly realized that actually that whole world wasn't going to be right for me. I credit actually to Carla, my wife, it was her who made the suggestion. Hey, like you're really interested in this fitness thing. You think maybe you could make it into a career? And honestly, it never really crossed my mind. Like I said, that would not have been an expectation for me that I would go into being a personal trainer. And when I told my parents, they were, shocked. Okay, so you went to a good school, you've got a first class degree in economics, you've got a master's degree in English literature. You just have one of like the kind of job that people would kill for, and you're going to go become a PT at Gymbox. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So that was the transition. And then, that was about 7 years ago now. And I'm so glad I did make that decision. And I feel, there are so many people that never have the opportunity to make that decision, or it doesn't happen for them. And I have a lot of sympathy with those people. I'm very lucky, I think, for that.
And so where did the passion for health and fitness come from? Were you very sporty growing up and just,
Well, I was sporty. Yeah, I think, I played a lot of tennis as a kid. I played rugby at school, played rugby at university. But I was by no means like an extraordinary athlete. I guess I was kind of active. I think probably the real interest in health and fitness didn't so much come from an active childhood, but actually from that kind of awkward transition from being a kid to being an adult and going through that thing of drinking way too much, having a terrible lifestyle. I ended up putting on some weight. And I think it was really that initially got me into shit. Maybe I need to get in shape. Like I hadn't gone to the gym before that. I had played sports and things, but it was really realizing that I got myself into some pretty bad shape that got me initially into the gym and interested. And then I think things developed from there. And that was, traditional starting point for anyone getting in the gym, like bodybuilding and like cardio, and it didn't really work very well. And but that's how it started, not, I guess, like most, like it starts for most people, because I needed to lose a little bit of weight and get a little bit less chubby.
I think that's almost everyone's journey into fitness. It starts with bodybuilding and sort of training for aesthetics, and you sort of figure out that that's not that effective for potentially what you want, and maybe not the most interesting, and that sort of sparks the curiosity of what type of training do I actually want to do, what works, what doesn't work, and same for food. I guess that's quite a natural segue for how did you become into CrossFit? Like, what was the route to entry there?
It is an interesting story, this one, actually. It's such a random thing. I was traveling in Africa on one of these kind of tours you can do. So we were in like a big tour bus going through, like, we started in South Africa, went up through Namibia, all the way around through Malawi into Tanzania. So we were on this bus with, I think, 20 odd other, and we were camping every night. And a few of the guys, we would try and kind of stay active as we were going around, maybe do some workouts at the campsites in the evening or in the morning. And it just so happened that one of the guys who was on the tour, a guy called Will from Canada, I still remember this guy, and he happened to be into CrossFit.
Yeah.
And so he would take us through some workouts at the campsites, and it was as kind of crazy and weird as you would expect. It was like, let's pick up this rock and we'll do some kettlebell swings. And here's this tree branch over here. We're going to jump on that and do some pull-ups. Then maybe we'll run around a little bit. And it just seemed like such an engaging, fun way to train, and so different to the 3x10 bench press and then get on the treadmill sort of thing, that I think I was kind of instantly hooked on it. And so when I got back to England, I just got straight back into, I went on to CrossFit.com. I just started doing all of the, the girl workouts and the heroes, and it just went from there.
Amazing. And so what was the, from doing CrossFit yourself, was that when you were still working in the bank, or was that?
That was before.
Wow.
I started doing CrossFit in 2008. So, I mean, 12 years ago now. Really? So that was actually when I was still at university. It was a long time before I was at the bank.
Oh, wow. So you're doing CrossFit through the corporate career, and then when you moved into gym box as a PT, at what stage did you decide that you were going to, I guess, set up a CrossFit box? Like, when did you is that where you met BJ, when you were PTing at gym box?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
we've just lost you there.
Oh, you got me?
Yeah, you're back.
I'm back. My connection's a bit dodgy here.
Okay.
Have you got me now? Is it good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. I've been training on my own with CrossFit for a long time, just training in commercial gyms, because back then there were really very, very few actual CrossFit boxes, even in London. But then when I did start at Morgan Stanley, there happened to be a CrossFit gym in Canary Wharf, which was CrossFit Thames. So that was when I first got introduced to the box environment and the kind of community thing of CrossFit as well. And it was at CrossFit Thames that I met Joss, and Joss is BJ's wife. Joss was a coach there, one of my favorite coaches then. And so we became friends and we started training together. And it was actually through Joss that I got the connection to personal training at gym box, because that's what she also did. along with one of the other coaches at Thames.
Right.
So that's how I started the gym box. And then naturally I met BJ, who was Josh's wife, but also one of the trainers at Gymbox Bank. And I think we hit it off because we were both interested in Olympic weightlifting, which at that point was still fairly niche. It's so popular now, but back then it was still quite unusual. So we would lift together at Gymbox Bank. And as you guys will know, David Cooper from Gymbox he just wanders around all the gyms and talks to people, and he would just drop in and chat to us, and sometimes he would train with us. And eventually he said, look, we're opening this gym in Old Street. You guys want to, why don't you start a box there? And we were like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea.
Amazing.
So it was quite a natural kind of progression.
So you had quite a nice smooth transition from doing pure PT into setting up the first City Roads affiliate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how was that experience? Like, was it quite difficult to drum up members initially? It's quite an unusual setup to run a box out of a commercial gym, but actually is an amazing model because you've got a world-class open gym the whole time around the edges, right?
It was incredibly hard to drum up interest actually at the beginning. We started with 15 members. And these were just basically clients of mine and clients of BJ. And so they started with us, and it really didn't grow very quickly. I don't know, maybe the first few months were very quiet. I think partly because it was kind of hard to market it as it was inside Gymbox, but also because I think BJ and myself were both interested in coaching and decent at coaching, but had absolutely no idea about marketing or how to market things or like sales or anything like that. So we were just like, whoa, if we just coach great classes, obviously people will come and it will get very, it happened like that. It was a small enough operation that we were able to just allow it to grow organically. We were lucky in that respect. We didn't have a huge overheads. We were still both doing PT, so we had our income coming in from there. And eventually it got busy. And then once it was busy, then it's much easier for it to be marketed.
Yeah. And was it the 3 gym boxes you operated out of Farringdon, Old Street, and Victoria?
That's right. Yeah. So it must have been about a year or more when we were just at Old Street. And then as soon as Victoria opened, we opened there. And I think that was 2015, February. And then when Gymbox Farringdon opened, we opened there too. And that's when things got a lot busier because suddenly we had a lot more classes, and we went from about 100 members very rapidly to over 200 members. And it was very difficult actually to run 3 different locations. And I don't think that we anticipated going in how much of a challenge that was going to be. Running the one at Old Street was great fun, very easy, and then 3 was a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Great fun, but very difficult.
Yeah, like trying to negotiate with the Gymbox classes as well, just like from a scheduling point of view alone. I'm sure that was not an easy job.
And then we also basically all the time we had 3 classes running simultaneously, which meant that we needed 3 coaches coaching simultaneously. So even though we only had 40 classes a week, we needed a lot of coaches. So we needed to train people up from the membership pool or through contacts and whatever. So that was a tricky thing to manage too.
Great. And well, I guess let's fast forward to earlier this year. You had a few years operating affiliate through London, and then 2020 happened, and Greg Glassman got onto Twitter, and I guess you were from my perspective, you're one of the first gyms that I'm familiar with to decide to de-affiliate from CrossFit. And I think a lot of affiliates had been becoming disenfranchised over the past couple of years, and this is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I guess I'd love to hear your story for your relationship with CrossFit and why you decided to do that earlier this year.
We were, BJ and myself, we were very happy to be a part of the CrossFit community. We recognize that we owe CrossFit a lot in terms of things that we've learned, methodology, and showing what a gym can be. I think they really did change the fitness landscape in a pretty significant way. But as you said, over the last few years, a lot of gym owners and coaches have pointed with certain aspects of the way that CrossFit was being operated centrally. To be fair, the kind of Greg Glassman thing and the George Floyd controversy, that would have been a straw that would have broke the camel's back on its own, because it was so shockingly bad.
Yeah.
But it was, I think what made it easy for a lot of people to step away was it was not the only thing that was wrong with CrossFit. So, I mean, all sorts of things that they were doing, promoting certain kinds of diets and certain methodologies and certain controversial scientific and medical opinions that they would express on the website to do with whatever it was, lipidology or a ketogenic diet, that were pretty, were not in keeping really with conventional scientific understanding. And that's fine to be skeptical and to push certain things, but I think that they were doing that in a slightly irresponsible way. But yeah, the George Floyd thing happened, and as you know, Greg Glassman made some very shocking comments on Twitter, and it basically just typified the whole problem in itself. Here was an old white guy saying really damaging things and not having any awareness or understanding of just how bad the things were that he was saying, and not even being able to admit in the aftermath that it was racist, saying I made a mistake and I get it, but it wasn't racist. It was absolutely plainly was racist. And Greg Glassman's obviously, he's famous for saying things he shouldn't say. But I think the problem with CrossFit then, and probably still now, goes a little bit deeper than just Greg Glassman, and that's why it was easy for us to step away. Dave Castro is another character who you look at and you think he's not a bastion of liberalism and diversity. And, he famously at one of the recent CrossFit Games had cornrows in his hair and was asked about diversity in CrossFit and basically laughed it off as a joke. So the problem goes deeper than Greg Glassman. It was a difficult thing to do, because in so many ways we do love what CrossFit has done, but equally it sat so badly with us that we knew that we had to do it, and do it quickly as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people fully agree, and I think it's been so interesting to see where gym owners have taken their businesses outside of CrossFit. And I think something I've admired with what you and BJ do is having a much more rounded approach to health and fitness. So I guess maybe get the listeners up to speed with City Road and leaving Gym Box and your plans for the future. And I think what I'd love to hear a lot about is the broader offering that you're going to be providing beyond just CrossFit training.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we were talking about before we started recording, City Road has kind of come to a natural end. Even we de-affiliated, we still ran as City Road Fitness, but through the pandemic, things have just been kind of thinning out. And in the end, it seemed like the right decision just to call it a day. So that's been 6 years as City Road. At the same time, we've been in the process of trying to set up our new gym, which is called Basis London. We raised some money for that a few years back and been looking for the right location. And now we think we found that. So we're targeting to be open in March next year. But Basis, this project was always about taking what we'd learned and what we like about CrossFit, but then also adding in other things that are important to us from a kind of health and fitness kind of perspective. So the approach is kind of more holistic. So we do believe in functional training and aspects of CrossFit, but we also believe in other things. For example, meditation, mindfulness would be a big part of what we do at Basis. So we're planning to do daily classes in kind of guided meditations, also more kind of restorative practices. So whether that's movement things, similar to some of the stuff you do, Ash, or kind of natural movement, and other kind of recovery protocols, a bit more of an emphasis on low intensity and aerobic training. So really just trying to, moving away from CrossFit gives us an opportunity to express our own philosophy on fitness, which has some similarities with CrossFit, but also some points of difference as well.
That's awesome.
Do you know, with it's funny you say that, because it's with like that gearing a bit more towards like the holistic style of training and so forth is definitely what I feel CrossFit has given, say, me the ability to do. And it kind of sounds like with you, because until I started CrossFit, did I ever start thinking about recovery? And when you start thinking about recovery and the benefit of, okay, maybe I'll start doing like some meditation or just going for some walks in the morning or doing these things for wellness, and actually then watching the performance improve because you're in a better headspace. And it's CrossFit for me was in the whole package, which is why I loved it. And it was being able to find things that you can get better at, things that you're bad at that you can improve upon, and then also the thing of how to eat to perform, then how to recover to perform. So it's that full package. And I think with what it sounds like with you guys are going to be doing, it sounds like that complete package, which sounds really, really good and sounds really interesting.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think the thing that CrossFit did, which was so cool, was it brought this idea of performance to like the everyday person. So that suddenly you were going to the gym, as you say, to perform better, to become an athlete. And that kind of just radically changed the way you would approach your training and the way you would approach the rest of your life as well. I think the one thing where maybe I disagree with CrossFit is this idea that health is the area under the curve of fitness. So they made this analogy between fitness and health. And I think a lot of people now would agree that, there are diminishing returns to everything, fitness included. And at a certain point, performance actually will start to detract from health. Yeah. So I think the idea with Basis is we take this idea of performance, but what we're interested in is what I think of as like life performance or human performance. So we are interested in performing well, but we're interested in performing well at life and not just in the gym. To the extent that it starts to kind of detract from the rest of your life. So that's the vision, is kind of, human performance.
It's a great way of putting it. I think something we talk about a lot, the trade-offs between health, performance and aesthetics. If you optimize maximally for one, you are trading off the other two. And I think you're spot on that synopsis of the CrossFit methodology, that they think fitness and health track one for one, and they absolutely don't.
I mean, it's like it would be the only system in biology that works like that, where more is always better. That basically never happens. It would be interesting I was thinking the other day, it would be interesting to see what happens with the current generation of CrossFit Games athletes, how they do later on in life. I think they might well be absolutely fine, but that would be because they alter their training and they understand that they need to ratchet down. But if they continue training like that, I think that they might run into some problems.
Definitely. Because you've got professional athletes, right?
The level that they, like someone like Matt Fraser and stuff like that, like the amount of training volume they do, and even if they can recover so they can train again effectively the next day, is in, as you say, like that deteriorating effect of what's going to happen years down the line when the body that's taken that much trauma. Like what? Because the thing is professional athletes is it's normally such specific trauma. Like whereas CrossFit being the range that it is it's everything. You have to be prepared for everything. So you're literally doing anything possible to your body. So and it's like on one side of the spectrum, it's great because it exposes you to positions and ranges that you may not be used to. And for the everyday person, I think that's amazing because as you know, like when you got into it originally, just lifting up logs, putting yourself up on, like that's what fitness should be like. Something I was always taught when I started out is like train for the zombie apocalypse, and that's what CrossFit is, because it's being prepared for that. But then when you take it to the level of like these athletes, it's like you do wonder, and it's it's gonna be an interesting case study to see if, like, and as you said, like that tracking of health and before, like that, I think it's gonna be really clear. I think later down the line, and fingers crossed, everyone's fine, because you don't want to obviously wish ill on anyone, but it's just, it will be interesting.
Absolutely, totally. I think that one thing is fair to point out in CrossFit's favor is, like, there is a definite difference between CrossFit as a training methodology and CrossFit as a sport. And if you look at kind of CrossFit.com programming, for example, that very much would be, I think, in keeping with good overall health. Like the way a lot of people, even in boxers now, train CrossFit is more in a competitive way. But if you look at classic CrossFit programming, it's pretty reasonable. It's not actually 5 Metcons a week. That you have these heavy days or skill days, and there are shorter Metcons and not always just long, brutal Metcons. So just classic CrossFit programming is, I think, an effective way to be healthy. But you take it to that next step, and then it's a very different thing.
Yeah, massively. Well,
I think where the influence of, like, the athlete side was where and they always say that when the athlete programming and the games programming starts to come into your affiliates is where you start seeing these problems, because you're gearing away from that classic CrossFit, which is being prepared, the general physical preparedness, being ready for everything, not being ready to perform at the level of these elite athletes, and doing things that you're going to a heavy 1 rep max deadlift and then going and sitting at your desk for 10 hours. It's like, it's like, that's the weighing up, but you're following the box's programming. So you got to do what you got to do. So it is that sweet spot. And I think that's obviously the ownership of the affiliates. And that's where you guys have seen, and what you seem to plan to do going forward, is that seeing the taking the benefits and the positives from CrossFit, and then also adding in, then, as you said, your approach to that, taking it that full wellness approach as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's tricky for boxers is they find that they might know what people should be doing, but it's such a hard sell sometimes to say to people, they come in, maybe some people only come twice a week, and on that day you've got kick up to handstand practice for 60 minutes, which should be part of the program. But people, that's a hard sell to get people bought into that. And people just want to do the sexy Metcons, and it's fun and it makes you feel great afterwards. So it is tricky for box owners to stick to kind of stick to their guns of what they know is right.
Yeah, giving them enough of what they want so that you get a chance to give them what they need. That's
absolutely, absolutely.
Perfect illustration of that. So I think it's quite a nice segue to your personal practices, mate. If we're going to talk about what you do for your physical performance, but also your health. You've also relatively recently become a father. So how do you juggle all those things? What's your daily routine like from a health and training perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, having become a father, my approach to training and everything has changed dramatically. And I think also because of lockdown and being at home. So a lot of my focus nowadays, training specifically, is doing the stuff that I know will benefit me without breaking me down too much. And at the moment, what that means for me personally is basic strength work with the barbell or the kettlebell in the garden, and running. And it's like mostly aerobic zone 2 running with a little bit of speed stuff thrown in. So it's the kind of stuff where, when I say basic strength, I mean like it's squats and deadlifts and presses and rows, pull-ups, and some ab work. So really basic stuff. And it's the kind of stuff which is not going to make me feel completely beaten up the next day. And the same thing goes for the run. Things which add to my life rather than take away and make me feel tired, because as a new dad, often I'm tired anyway. So that's the approach at the moment. That's obviously been influenced by lockdown too. I started doing a lot more running when gyms closed. I found it to actually be great fun. And it's not always running, it can be on the watt bike too. We've got a watt bike here. So that's my approach to training. In terms of other practices, one of the big things that changed for me over the last few years was this emphasis for me on mindfulness and meditation. And that practice has stayed with me through all of it. It's been the only really fully consistent thing is daily meditation practice, which is now a big part of my kind of wellness protocol, if you like. And actually, that's probably the linchpin thing for me, is that daily practice of meditation, which I really enjoy.
And what style of meditation do you use? An app for guided meditation, or?
I do a mixture. So it's basic, it's Vipassana kind of mindfulness meditation. So it's the style of meditation that most people are aware of nowadays. So it's kind of sitting down and becoming aware of the present moment, whether that's through the breath or through sensations in the body or sounds or even thoughts and emotions, and just really paying attention in a moment by moment fashion to those things. I started out using Headspace a few years back, and that was great, a really good introduction. Now I either set a timer or I use another app called Waking Up with a guy called Sam Harris, who I really like, and he just takes it just a little bit further into the practice, and I learned a lot through doing that.
He's got a great the way he guides you through it. That was the one thing I found with the Headspace. It just felt quite basic in a way, to the point where you then listen to Sam and it's just like you genuinely feel like you're getting an understanding of why you're doing it. And like when your thoughts do wander and stuff and like that, and then literally the next thing he says, oh yeah, your thoughts may be wandering. You're like, he's in my head. How do you know? It's definitely a really good thing. I also use that. Have you heard of Insight Timer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've across it recently. Do you?
No, not regularly. I've started to play around with little bits and bobs of things. So for me, it's been Sam Harris. Is like, that's been my, whenever I do any meditation, normally after my morning walks, it'll be then followed by that, because I find the blood flowing. So rather than just going from sleeping to then trying to then meditate, where there's a cross section, am I back asleep or not?
Yeah.
So going from my walk and then coming back and then taking that moment to then really check in with myself and stuff. It's especially during the lockdown stuff as well. It's been such a, as you say, I think the linchpin is that's a great word for it, because it's been like a really good staple for me, for then what helped me feel better throughout my day.
Absolutely. That's the thing. I mean, the thing is, ultimately, I think we all got into health and fitness. There were these goals, whether it was performance or losing weight or whatever, but why do we do anything? Mostly because we want to increase our sense of well-being and happiness. And for me, meditation is the biggest part of that, because it's about the health of your mind. And if you don't have the health of your mind, and you haven't worked on the mind, which is the way you experience everything, then you're missing something there for me.
Yeah, spot on. And I've seen you and BJ getting into the Hampstead Heath ponds. So cold dipping is another part of your rounded approach. Take us through that.
Well, you know what? For me, this cold exposure pond dipping thing is really about so many different things altogether. So we're not getting in an ice bath at home. We're going to Hampstead Heath, and we're getting in the ponds as a community thing too. So we're with a number of people. So yes, absolutely, it's about the cold exposure, but we're also out in Hampstead early morning. It's stunningly beautiful. And we're with some mates, and it's a group of guys, because it's the men's ponds, and we get in. It's an experience together, and we go for a coffee afterwards. So it's just, I think it's quite a good example of a practice which encapsulates so many different things at the same time. We can talk about the health benefits of cold exposure, but on their own, they're not interesting enough to me to do it. It's about, first of all, the kind of mental challenge of getting in. It's really another mindfulness practice too, getting into something very cold and understanding how you need to engage with that coldness and be okay with it, and how to go through that experience. And then, you're outside, you're in nature, you're with friends. I mean, all of those things, I think, contribute to health and well-being. You mentioned, Rob, your morning walks. And I think one of the greatest things about the first lockdown in particular was everyone was suddenly outside. You'd go for a walk on the heath here, 9 a.m. on a Monday and it was busy. And I think that's a really good lesson that we can all learn, is just how important and how nice it is just to be outside in nature. And it's a simple thing, but it can make a big difference to your to your well-being.
Do you know, it's funny because it's the first lockdown. I think it was really easy for people to do these things because of the sun, because it was warm the day. Whereas now, obviously, we got darker mornings and stuff like that. This is where these practices should be stapled, and like this is where the benefits come. It's like I've recently got quite into cycling, and yeah, so I think everyone, well, with the cycling stuff is that one of the sayings they say is winter miles equals summer smiles. With that, I think is exactly the thing of, like, with the walks in the morning, it's very easy when you got sunrise, everything, but when it's dark, it's raining, it's cold, it's like you don't want to do these things, but it's taking that step to doing things that you're uncomfortable with and becoming comfortable with them, because that's, as I said, like it just sets you up for the day and sets you up for any challenges that come your way. You've already overcome the initial inertia of getting out in the cold, even if it's walking or getting into, and that, I would love to have like some outdoor, like ponds, sea, just something, because it's like the cold shower just, it's good.
Cold shower?
Yeah, cold showers are good, but it's just not the same. And I will try to find somewhere, but because it's just, that's, as you said, it's for more than just the cold exposure. It's the experience, that thing of actually doing something outside in nature. And it's, question for you is, have you found that since becoming a father and stuff like that, have you found that your wellness like mindset has increased even more, and your thoughts of like how your well-being is, and how habits and stuff that you're doing are gonna obviously impact your now new family? And so have you found that heightened?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely changed my perspective, on the purpose of all these things. What am I doing all this for? Obviously before it was fairly self-driven, like I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to feel this way, I want to feel that way. Now it is about, I want these things to add to the way in which I can show up and be present with my daughter. When she gets a little bit older, actually already now, to be fair, it is also about modeling certain things, hopefully, that she can learn from. It's quite often when I'm in the garden, she'll be our living room is right there on the garden, and she'll be on the playmat and she drags herself over, and she's so fascinated by what I'm up to in the garden. So hopefully she's already starting to see those things. But yeah, absolutely. And like you said, well-being is the main thing. I want to make sure that I'm in the right physical, emotional, spiritual place to be the best kind of father that I can be, which is also why for me meditation is such a big part of it, because it is very easy to get distracted with a baby and to get wrapped up in, I'm so tired, oh my gosh, another nappy, or whatever it is. But there's so much joy to be found as well in all those small moments, if you can really be present with them. So yeah, it has massively changed the way I think about things.
Yeah,
how about for you?
Yeah, for me, it's just it's funny because at the start it was so intense, and it was just like you're right with that thing of another nappy of this and that. And my missus has been absolutely amazing, and it's like it's been trying to take those, because the one thing that she said to me once, and it really stuck with me, is just remembering that these times are going to pass, and these are also times that you'll look back to, and like, changing a nappy, or like, for instance, at the moment, my daughter, like when we bath her and stuff like that, she's just like, she wants me to get in the bath, and I'm like, I'll get in, and it's just like, because that's the enjoyment, and that's what she wants you to experience that with her. And I'm just like, yeah, it's a bit more than ball ache for me, but it just means I can have fun with my daughter, which is then good. And it's like, it's those little things. And I listened to a book, which was the book you wish your parents had read, or something like that. And it was such for me an eye-opening approach, because it was coming from the aspect of like your child. And it's like how like if you're in the park, the one example that always sticks out to me is like, if you're in the park and you're cold and you want to go, but your kid's running around having fun, don't just say to them, we're going. It's like you say, okay, cool, we're gonna go in 5 minutes, and you stick with that. And it's like you're preparing them. And when they go in, when you look, we're gonna go in 2 minutes now. When it gets to that 5 minute mark, you say, right, we're going. They're gonna kick up a fuss, but you've already told them what's going to happen, so they're understanding. And for me, it's those things that I'm starting to like really take on as a father, is in like looking at ways that I can make her have a better outlook on things, and that understanding. It's such an amazing thing. It really is. I'm just it really is the gift that keeps giving until it takes all the time. But you know, it really is. It's such an amazing thing.
It's an amazing experience, and it's easily the most challenging thing I've ever done, but easily the best thing too. Like, and actually having been a dad during lockdown, I got, I think, some things which a lot of people wouldn't have got. So I was at home so much, and it was amazing I had so much time to bond with Pia as she was growing up. And even now we have these little things which soon we won't be able to do anymore. Like in the morning, I normally get up early and do some things or some exercise, and I'll come back in when my daughter wakes up, and we just sit in the bed, the three of us together, for like 10-15 minutes, have some coffee. It's just such a magical kind of small moment. Things like that I'm very grateful for. A book I'm reading at the moment is called The Conscious Parent. I'm not sure if you've come across that one.
Sounds good though.
The one you mentioned, I've actually got, so that's on my list. I'll give it a look next. But this was quite similar. It was just like looking at things from the child's perspective, not getting wrapped up in what's going on for you when it comes to childcare. Yes, of course it's hard. Yes, it can be frustrating, all these things. But what about what's going on for your baby? If for example, your baby's crying a lot, yes, it's quite difficult for you as a parent, but what's going on for your baby? Obviously they're upset, there's something going on. So, just shifting the perspective a little bit, I think is useful. But
that crying thing is funny, because there was something, I can't remember if it was in that book or my missus said it to me. And so obviously there's loads of parenting methods for this, that, and the other, but a lot of people would say heard of like the cry out method and stuff like that. And so like where your baby cries and you just leave them till they settle. And it's like something that my missus said, which is why we never did that, was because it was just like, if you imagine you're this new baby, right? So you've just come into this world, you're crying out because you're scared or whatever. So if you imagine you're on a desert island and you're crying out, you can see a boat and no one's coming over to you. Yeah. Just imagine that as a baby, you're crying out because you're scared or cold, whatever it is. You're trying to communicate. And the only way you communicate is by crying. So just imagine then your only protector then doesn't come to pick you up and soothe you. So how does that affect you later on? And it's just like, for me, it's those little things. And it's like, it's not saying that maybe my parents or whoever's parents did anything wrong because that was obviously what they were told was best thing then. So I think, but where like the fact you're reading a book like that, Conscious Parent, just shows that we are becoming more conscious of our impact on our kids or impact on other people that I think people take for granted, because a lot of it was like the parents were like a dictatorship, whereas now it's a lot more about being a partnership, which is why I think going back to like your vision for like your gym, and I think that's where that whole approach is becoming a lot more common, if you know what I mean, because I think people are starting to realize and see the importance of taking it all in. And as you said, meditation I think is I think a really good staple for really getting that base understanding of you, because that's where it starts. At the end of the day, it starts with you and how you react with things. So
going back to what you just said, we also didn't do any of that cry out stuff. I think it was just like intuitively it just did not feel right at all. And it might well have worked. I've heard it does work to make your baby sleep, but you're right, at what cost potentially to them, and at what cost to you too. It's just very painful as a parent. And one of the things that I read that helped me understand that better was making an analogy between the way you behave with your baby and the way you might behave with your spouse or your partner. So it's like, if your partner was crying and they were really upset about something, what would you do? Would you walk out of the room, close the door, and just wait until they figured it out? Or would you maybe give them a
Yeah.
cuddle, ask them
Yeah.
what's the matter. And
Yeah.
so analogies like that kind of help me understand that sort of
Yeah.
stuff as well.
It's just the fact that just because the child can't talk to you yet doesn't mean that they don't need the same love and affection, because it's like by not doing a cry out method, essentially it took us 16 months for my daughter to have a proper night's sleep. And then even then she's still in our room and stuff, and which is, you know, and some are like, wow, she's like 2 and a bit still in your room. I'm like, at the end of the day, she's going to want her own room at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, when you said like be about in bed and having the coffee, and like those moments, like if I ever do sleep in and like wake up at the same time, and like say my daughter will come, like, you know, she'll wake up, and it's those memories that I'll remember. She won't, but I'll remember.
It's very
just
special.
like, and you don't get those back. And just to get her into her own room for what? So that me and the missus can just have the bed then. But it's in the grand scheme of things, it's like, say what, 2-3 years?
Yeah.
And in a lifetime, that's nothing. And it's like, we're so quickly to get the kids to grow up now. And it's just like, no, let them be kids. Let them just crack on.
Mate, we're on exactly that same path. So Pia is now 8 months old. She doesn't sleep through or anything. She's in, you know, we have a cot in our room that she starts the night in, but she she doesn't end the night there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it can be, there are obviously some challenges with that, but like you said, at some point she will be developmentally ready that she wants her own room, that she'll sleep through, whatever. And for now, we're just going to try and let biology take care of itself and just
and it does.
The process. Yeah.
Right, Tom, I want to be respectful of your time, so before we bring things to a close quickly, but just to finish up, can you give the listeners any sneak peeks into what's to come? You mentioned Basis is looking to open in March. Can you give us any more information about that? Where can we stay tuned to be first to hear?
So we're hoping to open in March, and in Old Street, just near Old Street, so kind of back where we started.
Awesome.
We're on Instagram. It's at basis.london, Facebook too, but I think Instagram is the best place to keep in touch for now. We have a podcast which you've been on, Ash, the Health Club, which you can find on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or all the normal places, and also that's shared on our Instagram. So yeah, those are the best places to keep in touch with what's going on.
Sounds like Pia's desperate for her dad to come back. So
can you guys hear that?
we'll let you go, mate. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great to chat.
Yeah, it's been really good, mate. Cheers.
Thank you guys. That was great fun, and look forward to hearing it when it comes out.
Hopefully see you IRL in not too long.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Right, thanks, Tom.
Thanks so much, guys. Cheers. See you. Bye.
Rob, do you want to wrap it up?
Oh, mate, I'll leave it to you, mate. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you for listening, guys. This has been the Lunge Lift podcast. If you've been listening to this, you'll be very aware that we're on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Reviews are very great received. Any feedback you want to give us, any topics you want covered, please give us a message at lunge.lift on Instagram. But otherwise, thank you for listening and have a great day.
Beautiful, mate. See you guys next week.